Welcome to the Boosted Volunteer Podcast. We share the stories of dedicated Booster Club volunteers and the tools and strategies they use to run successful booster clubs. We also have sought-out experts on fundraising, volunteer management, and running nonprofits to share best practices. Hosted by Robin Eissler and Evan Eissler, you won't want to miss these great episodes that will help you run your booster club like a champ.
Welcome to the Boosted Volunteer. Today we have Kyle Ruschman, who's the VP of Sales and Business Development at USIO. Kyle's an expert on prepaid debit card solutions and has been helping organizations manage payment options for a long, long time. Kyle, we're excited to have you here today on the Boosted Volunteer.
Robin, thank you so much. So excited to be here and looking forward to having some great conversations around how this product works.
Yeah, that's awesome. So debit cards, we all use them with our personal bank accounts. How can these be valuable and how can they work for a nonprofit? Tell us a little bit about it.
If it might be helpful, I'd like to give maybe a little bit back in time view of how I got into the space and obviously what it's relevant today.
Absolutely.
For nonprofits, for booster clubs. So as you mentioned, been in the fintech, the payment space for quite some time. I have children of my own, so I have 4 kids, and you see a lot of these debit cards being used for family households, budgets and expenses. And so the product was started as a multi-card family budgeting app that people would use just for normal household expenses. We also found that a lot of small businesses and nonprofits were using the same platform and technology to support their small business needs. And so as we continued through the market, the business shifted a little bit to really support a lot of these nonprofits and boosters and small businesses. And so the value of the debit card is obviously there's a lot of control of what you can put for a family household or for a small business. So my oldest, who's 16, uses his card often. He will be out needing gas or needing to pick up some meals or food. So it's very easy for us to go into there and then send him funds instantly, the same way that it may be a small business owner would need to have that flexibility and control and instantaneously being able to send funds to their staff, but also providing some of the oversight and some of the control elements of what those funds are being used for. There's also a lot of controls where through the debit card platform and app that you could freeze a card if it's lost or stolen or misplaced. So there's a lot of security around that. If you wanted to proactively block some of the types of merchants that these cards can be used for, that's another element of the value of the product and the platform.
We had a booster club recently we were talking to about using debit cards, and their bank account just generally had about $100,000 in it. So the president said, I don't feel comfortable issuing bank debit cards to everyone because then they have access to this large sum that we have in the bank. But these prepaid cards, you control how much goes on them. Can you explain how that process works?
Yeah. So the way that the product would work is, let's say we have 10 cards that the booster would have access to. Essentially, those 10 cards could have zero value on them. And so if you're going out to make a purchase or you're buying uniforms for the club, or maybe you're taking the team out for a team meal, you could essentially put $1,000 on that card, move it instantly from your linked bank account. And then let's say you only spent $800 of those dollars, then you'd be able to pull the $200 back and put it in the main kitty. And so there really is zero risk of overpayment or having somebody use it for larger funds that's intended to that. So there is that real-time control that you're able to preload the card with whatever the designated amount is, obviously seeing the transactions and capturing that receipt imagery of what that was, but then also having the ability to unload whatever funds aren't used and put them back into that kind of primary holding account.
So if you were a treasurer of Booster Club, rather than having to get receipts from everybody and then figure out what they're for and then write a check to reimburse them, you could give them one of these cards, load an amount. If it's somebody buying pizzas, you could give them $100, or if they're going on a trip, you could give them $1,000. So it limits the amount of funds that they have access to.
Yes, it's exactly right. There really is no reimbursement process that would have to take place. So I wouldn't have to use my own funds. I'm very involved in my kids and their sports. So we've been in these situations where we have to go out and buy uniforms in advance or do some team meals. And so there is no reimbursement process. You essentially would have this debit card in your possession, and it could be obviously only used for a very small, limited amount of managers or approved administrators throughout the process. And so it really eliminates that whole process. And then to your point about the kind of integration from an accounting perspective, you would see every transaction that would be fully integrated into the interface. And then those transactions would automatically be fed into the Booster Up system to really eliminate a lot of that manual paperwork.
And so I'm thinking of like a petty cash situation. So people could have a small amount on their card so that when you need to buy something quickly, you've got 3 or 4 people in the Booster Club that have $50 or $100 or maybe $200 on their card to use for those petty cash situations too, right?
That's 100% right. We see that use case quite often. And obviously the ability for that administrator in the event that they would need to top up additional funds if that petty cash got to an amount that they needed more funds that day. The same way that my son calls me and says, Dad, I need some funds to put on my card. And you can go through the app and do that instantly. It really does solve a lot of those petty cash potential challenges. And obviously not even dealing with cash anymore. Everything can be spent and used on a card. The cards can be physical cards, virtual cards. They could be provisioned into the mobile wallet. So if you have Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. So very convenient, and it really eliminates a lot of the challenges that a typical petty cash process would be.
So in the system, and just talking about these debit cards in general, you can have a physical card, right? Or you can have a virtual card, which is just a number. So if you're just doing all your purchasing online, you can have just a virtual card. Can you talk about the differences between those two and how those work?
Sure. So when you initially create your list of card accounts that you would need for the booster, the nonprofit, for the business, there's the ability to create that physical card or virtual card at point of issuance. So obviously, if it's a physical card, we will send you that to the organization or directly to the recipient's place of address. If it's a virtual card, it's securely within the web app and the mobile app experience. You can literally click that card number, copy it, putting into an address to maybe buy some merchandise. Hopefully you can buy some merchandise through the Booster Up app and buy all your equipment and spiritware there. And so it's literally just a 16-digit card number, expiration date, CVV that's securely within the app, but there is no physical plastic. So we do see a lot of businesses, organizations, they might use that for using it for Facebook advertisement for social media, or maybe it's the card that they use for paying internal bills or any type of payment methods that might need to be there to run their business. So you could create as many of these kind of virtual card accounts. They could be designated specifically for that use case. And there really is no limit of how much you're able to put on there and spend, or how many of these card accounts that you can create within the system.
That's really cool. So for like boosters, if we were a marching band, we could create different card accounts for different expense categories, food, travel, uniforms, things like that. And that would make the accounting process a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, for not being able to commingle any of these funds and keeping them all separate, absolutely. We see a lot of organizations that do that. And I think even to your point earlier with the integration component, every one of those would have their own separate record. They could tie it into the accounting system, and it really just creates a lot of efficiencies for the organization.
I've used these prepaid cards to give gifts or something, and you go and you buy them at the store and there's some sort of fee. How do these work? And is there a percentage that they have to pay on the transactions, or is there a cost? If booster clubs are interested in doing this, how does the fee work?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't charge any fees for usage of the product. And so if I have a card in my hand and I'm out there swiping the card to buy uniforms, to buy lunches or meals, there's no transactional cost that would be applied to the booster. The only fee that would be there is if you're buying plastics, we've got to cover some of the costs there. So a small setup fee, just one time for that initial account. But as far as using this throughout the year, throughout the multiple years, for all the purchases, the transactions, the oversight, the integrations, there's no fees to use those cards in market.
So you mentioned buying plastic. That's a physical card, right? So if they're using physical cards, there's a small fee. Virtual cards, there's no fee for setup, or how does that work?
Very nominal setup fee for that, just to create the initial account. But yes, you're not dealing with plastics and printing and shipping an envelope. So there are some programs that literally just have all virtual cards, to your point, that they're using for those specific purposes. And maybe just to have a manager or two that has a physical card in the event that they need that out in market. But as you see in the industry, most businesses, most organizations have the ability to tap and pay and use those cards in a virtual sense. Plus, there's a lot of push from a sustainability aspect. And so we definitely would highly recommend the ability to use the platform and as many of these virtual accounts that would be there. But yes, if you need a few physical cards, it'd be a small fee to print those.
Okay. If you've got the card, so you've created either the virtual or the physical card, and now how do you put the money on it? Do you have an app or how does that work?
Yes. So every account would have a web app that the team administrators could log into. There's also a native iOS and Android mobile app that they could go into. Once the card account is created, you can send those funds instantly to that individual card account. So there's a few ways to do that. You could link your business operating account. We use a MasterCard service called Finicity. And so let's say I sign up as a new booster and we have our operating account with Chase and we want to link that account and then fund it onto the prepaid debit card product. Once that transaction is linked, then you have the ability to instantly load that from the linked bank account.
So it works like a Venmo. You just connect your bank account and then you just need to move money. You just click and it moves it over.
Correct.
Is it instant? Does it move over instantaneously?
So as soon as you make a transaction of a certain amount successful, so we're doing some security measures to make sure that's a valid active account. And then once we see that history, then yes, it'll be an instant load. And there's different velocities and controls that we can put in place. If one of these users has a large booster, many organizations need to fund that. We're taking a little bit of that risk to load those instantly and then pulling those funds from the bank. And so that kind of gets to the other point. What other organizations also do to load this is they'll just send an ACH or a wire into our sponsor bank account. And then we would apply, and the vendor listed $100,000. So if it's a large purchase or 10,000, whatever that amount is, you could send in an ACH and a wire to that account. You would see access to those funds as soon as we post them to your specific card management platform. And then from there, you can load those individual sub cards, if you will.
Got it. So some of our, particularly the marching bands, when they travel, they can have really large expenses, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Can the debit cards handle the spending amounts that high?
Yeah. So with us doing this for the amount of time that we have, we've been able to work very closely with MasterCard and closely with our sponsor bank team and really have some of these, again, controls in place. So we actually have the ability to make transactions of $50,000 per transaction. So if it's a very large expense that you would have to do, we have some that are up to $100,000. So we can obviously want to provide a lot of security around that. But for actual like swiping a card, I know some traditional debit card or bank products might have certain limits of how much you can actually spend in a day and in a time. Because it's all of our technology that we're providing, we see a lot of that information. So we've been able to increase those and provide some more oversight on those larger transactions.
There's a lot of alphabetic abbreviations for security: FDIC, SOC 2, PCI, Level 1. Can you just give us the real dummy version of all of that and what that means as it relates to these debit cards and what's important?
Sure. There are a lot of those. And I think we continue to learn even more and more as this industry advances. But yes, the funds are all FDIC insured. So there's protections with the dollars that you have within the system. MasterCard Zero Liability is also available for the usage of these cards. You mentioned the SOC 2 and the PCI. That's all stuff that we have to abide by for our systems and go through the appropriate audits. The PCI is the payment card industry standard. So the protections of those individual card accounts and the back-end systems and all the protocols and the infrastructure that we have to have in place to really continue to support these in a compliant fashion. We're doing these audits with our sponsor banks and the networks. And obviously it's allowed us to really continue to increase and grow our business and just have a great rating and standard with all the regulators and all those alphabets that you mentioned up there.
You mentioned early on that you can block certain categories. What does that mean? So you could block the card from being used as certain type of vendor?
Correct. So anytime that you swipe a debit card, it's going to be classified what's called an MCC code or a merchant category code. And so if you're swiping your card at a grocery store, at a restaurant, at a movie theater, it's going to classify it as a certain MCC code. Obviously, you can go to the point where you might want to have a little bit of controls over there. So that we want to block the merchant category code for liquor stores or for gambling sites, or maybe it's you want to block it for certain types of travel. And so as you're building out these programs, we'll work very closely with the organization, put those certain controls or restrictions in place. We do a lot of work in the government business and the nonprofit sector. So some of these are even specific to how they want the cards to be used. This is a card that's only used for food expenses or only used for transportation. And so we put those guardrails or fence posts around those certain purchases, or we really don't care, but we just want to block certain things to be a little more comfortable. So that's all part of the process as we work closely with our partners to build out the programs for them.
So you could block, for instance, did a bunch of virtual cards. You could make one card, this card's only good for food, or this card's only good for travel or something like that. Could you take it to that level?
Yeah, you could take it to that level. It's a little bit of work that we need to do on the setup with the configuration. And these are some other things that we're also working on with some of our partners, maybe as Booster Hub continues to grow and really capture the full market. But there are even some partners that they're even involved or integrated in the authorization of every transaction.
Oh, wow.
And so you can almost get very granular to where, to your point, that individual card is only used for certain items or certain merchants. And so we can get down to that merchant ID level. And that's really the value, again, I think getting back to just the prepaid debit type products and some of the oversight and controls is there's so much flexibility. It's a very agile platform to be able to perform these levels of controls and really just have it to where it's more almost a set it, forget it. So you create these card accounts, it's used for a specific purpose, and then you can continue to grow and do the things that obviously the boosters and the nonprofits and all the hours that are put into this for volunteerism and work and really focus on what really matters and not the back end administrative stuff.
Yeah, that's really the goal, is getting out there and getting things that can help simplify the role instead of making more time. So speaking of getting started and set up, how long does it take if a booster club's interested in getting these debit cards? Give us just a broad overview of what the process looks like and how long it takes to get set up.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. So there's just a quick online application form that each booster would go through 1 to 2 days. We can typically have a response back with an approval after we do the system checks and check with the sponsor bank. And then literally once that's done, you can log into your account and start creating cards right there on the spot. So within a week for sure, you could go through the process, review the application setup. But we try to do 1 to 2 days for an approval.
Awesome. I know going forward, just a little Booster Hub will be doing the sign up and the setup right in Booster Hub coming later this year. So you'll be able to sign up for these Akimbo debit cards right from there, making it a streamlined process. We're looking forward to that, to giving all booster clubs access to this. So we're excited about that. Well, Kyle, I know you've mentioned a couple times during the call, you've got kids in sports and activities. Give us a little insight. What's your connection to youth sports or activities? Did you play a sport in high school or do an activity? How did it impact your life? We really like to share the message about why the work of booster clubs is so important, supporting these kids out doing these activities.
Oh, I love that question, Robin. So yes, I was an active kid growing up. I had 2 brothers, one brother older, one was younger, played basketball, football, baseball, soccer. Really started to focus on soccer growing up through high school. And my dad was fortunate to coach me and my brothers in a lot of our sports activities. So I'm blessed to be able to continue that with my children. So I have 3 boys and a girl. I have a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 11, and 9. My daughter is 11, so I coach her soccer team still to this day. I had coached my other boys in soccer. I'm still involved in my youngest, my 9-year-old. Have coached them in basketball and also are in the heart of baseball season now. So every night there's a practice, a game, a task, an extracurricular specialty, agility class or something that the kids are doing. So really fortunate that I can be involved and have some flexibility with work and travel to do that. I know the work that goes into this from the administrative side. I wish I had a little bit more time to help with that. Most of the time I'm there just to show up and step a hand and help coach any way that I can. And so services like this and tools like Booster Hub just know how immensely that does help keep things on track from an organization, from a receiving of payments and tournament entry fees and buying merchandise and hats and uniforms. And so I think it's tools like these that really allow the dads and the coaches and the moms, the team administrators pull all this stuff together. Just as an example, this weekend, I'm going to be driving my son down to Bowling Green, Kentucky for a doubleheader of the baseball tournament. My 14-year-old is also in a tournament up in Ohio, so a little bit of the other direction. And I'm actually going to miss him coaching on Saturday, but I'll be there on Sunday. And then my daughter has a dance competition. So my wife's going to be there with her there. So the more tools, the more apps and services that are out there to really help not only the booster clubs, but also the families and just the stress and all the work that goes on to that really provides a lot of value. And our hope is that just through our debit card platform and the work that we've done and the experiences that we've seen over the last 12, 13 plus years can really just provide a little bit of level of comfort and ease for some of these different tasks that need to be done throughout the day.
Well, I was just talking with someone the other day, and it finally dawned on me that raising your kid experience from about 10 years old to 20 is really the busiest time period of your life, because you've got height of your career at that point. Your kids are doing all these activities. You're trying to manage both. And you're in this world where you've got something from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day, every day of the year for about 7 or 8 years. So you're in the thick of it. So hang on, you'll get there. And we love that we're able to bring tools like these debit cards out to our Booster Hub parents who are just doing the same thing you're doing, right? Trying to manage all the chaos and then raise money for the kids' activities as well. So, well, thank you for joining us today, Kyle. We really appreciate it. And if anybody's interested in learning more about the USIO Akimbo debit card platform, you can reach out to us at Booster Hub at team@boosterhub.com, and we can get you connected with Kyle and his team.
All right, Robin, thank you so much. Thoroughly enjoyed this. It was a pleasure. And yeah, maybe we'll reconnect her down the road and see what other activities we got going on.
Absolutely. Well, good luck at those tournaments this weekend.
The Boosted Volunteer is brought to you by Booster Hub. To find out more about Booster Hub and how our app can help you improve communications, increase engagement, raise more money, and manage your booster club responsibly, visit www.boosterhub.com. And then make sure to search for Booster Club Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Booster Hub, thanks for listening.